Today, Donald Trump had a cabinet meeting, and I honestly don't know what the most embarrassing part of it was. Maybe it was him sleeping through a large portion of the live cabinet meeting, which I guess is understandable when you consider that he was up half the night rage tweeting over on Truth Social, posting something like 162 different times in the middle of the night. So it's kind of understandable that Don Old would be sleeping, resting his eyes during the cabinet meeting. Also incredibly embarrassing is how his cabinet basically uses the cabinet meetings as an attempt to see who can outdo each other by sucking up to the president. From Kristi Noem giving Trump credit for there being no hurricanes this year. Wait, I thought it was the Democrats who controlled the weather. To Marco Rubio saying that Donald Trump is the only one who can bring peace to the world, essentially. These sort of actions in a cabinet meeting would be rejected by Hollywood filmmakers as being unbelievable, and yet here we are. But maybe the piece de resistance of the travesty that is Donald Trump's cabinet meetings was the name tag for Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, having the very apropos typo of SS at the beginning of his title. Whether it was by gross incompetence or somebody trying to send a not so subtle message, either way, it's pretty fucking embarrassing as an American.
Welcome to the Surrender at Appomattox. It's time to talk about Donald Trump's L's for the week. It's only Tuesday. There's a video of you going around trying to walk to a helicopter while leaning so hard on your wife she looks like she's about to fall over. And then the White House did a terrible Photoshop job of you in front of the Christmas tree. What? And then you went on Truth Social and posted like 400 times, not an exaggeration, in 2 hours. Are you stressed? Are you just really stressed out? Why would you be so stressed out? Is it because you've had to withdraw a record number of nominees from Senate confirmation because you can't get them through? Don't you control the Senate? Or is it because an appeals court said that yet again your personal attorney is not the U.S. attorney for New Jersey? She's just not. Or maybe it's because the assistant secretary to the GOP in Georgia just got busted soliciting a 14-year-old boy. Oh, or maybe it's because New Yorkers just completely foiled an ICE raid. Just it's not happening. Oh wait, is it because Kristi Noem is under investigation for contempt? Or wait, is it because Pete Hegseth is under investigation by the House and the Senate for what looks to be just murder? Or wait, is it because Kash Patel is under investigation by Congress for using his government jet to go see his girlfriend sing? Or is it because Pete Hegseth used an image of Franklin the turtle killing a bunch of people that he had AI generate and then the publisher was not happy about it? Or wait, is it because the Republicans in Congress have already said that your healthcare ideas are stupid and not happening? Is that it? Or wait, is it because Costco sued you for the tariffs and are demanding a refund? I know you tried to make yourself feel better by talking about how Black Friday sales were record-setting. That turns out to be bullshit. The number of items people purchased was down, but the price increases were way up. So why was it a record-setting Black Friday? Inflation. And whose fault is inflation now? Yours. Tyson's laying off 1,700 people at a plant in Texas, just closing an entire production shift. They also just closed a whole plant in Nebraska, just the whole thing. Why? Tariffs. It's just the center square of the bingo card at this point. An Indiana Republican has accused you of violating the Hatch Act. And yet another one is going to vote no on redistricting because he has a daughter with Down syndrome and you're just using the R word out here with your whole chest. Do words have consequences? I take personal responsibility for this one a little bit. The head of the Virginia Republican Party is quit because they lost so bad. It was really bad. It was really, really bad. I would also quit. I would hide and never come out ever to be seen in public. Your approval rating has hit a second-term low, and it is now the lowest it's been since you slunk out of office in 2021, right around, what? January 6th. Yeah. It's really just a slow January 6th we're living through right now, after all. 60% disapproval. Aha! Over a third of your 2024 electorate does not consider themselves associated with the word MAGA. It's okay, babe. I'm sure if you continue talking about the preventative MRI of your abdomen, people will stop realizing that you're falling apart in front of them like a rotting zombie.
Don't scroll because I am sure I'm sure you want to hear this one. I was thinking earlier, I was like, why in the world did they have this cabinet meeting followed by a podium style speech in the Oval Office by Donald Trump today? Like, that's a lot for him. Are they just trying to prove that he's competent and able to stay awake during the workday? He fell asleep at the cabinet meeting anyway. So then I thought, no, there's a reason why they have him on camera so much today. So the press is looking at him and what's going on in the White House. Here's why. This is why we pay attention to small publications and independent journalists. Below, you can see this was published today, Tuesday, December 2nd, 2025. Donald Trump sued over, quote, Epstein identical trafficking in Palm Beach County. It's important to remember that this is just a lawsuit at this time. So this is just getting started. The lawsuit itself was filed on November 24th of this year. I'm going to do a little reading from the article because I really don't want to mess up the facts here. So it says that a sprawling new lawsuit filed in Palm Beach County accuses Donald Trump, along with Elon Musk, Bill Gates, federal agencies, and other high-profile figures of participating in what plaintiffs describe as an Epstein-identical trafficking and exploitation venture spanning nearly a decade. The filing, submitted in the 15th Judicial Circuit, seeks more than $300 million in damages and asserts that the alleged conduct mirrors the operational patterns of the Jeffrey Epstein network. Now, there's more facts and figures I'm about to share, but I do want to point out that if you go to Boca News now and click on this article and scroll down the page, when you are on a laptop or desktop computer, this actually turns into a 149-page complete complaint. So this is public information. You can go digging through it and find out all you want to know. Now, there's lots in this article, but I want to read a few more key points because I just think it's so imperative that everyone know. So according to the complaint, the plaintiffs claim the defendants engaged in coercion, retaliation, and misappropriation of intellectual property while benefiting financially and politically from proprietary technology. The plaintiffs say they were pressured to produce. The filing explicitly argues that the alleged trafficking scheme follows a structure, quote, identical in every material respect to Epstein's, citing grooming beginning in 1998, the use of billionaire-backed foundations as silencing mechanisms, and sexual assaults allegedly employing the same, quote, blitz-style methods documented in Epstein victim depositions. In addition to the human trafficking, it also notes that the lawsuit accuses Musk, Gates, and affiliated institutions of misappropriating confidential innovations, including a cybersecurity system, a defense architecture platform, and a non-hormonal contraceptive technology. These plaintiffs say these were provided under promises of support, but later used without permission, echoing past claims that Epstein associates exploited victims' business ideas and creative works under the guise of philanthropy. It's no wonder we had a televised cabinet meeting today, followed by whatever version of a speech Donald Trump gave from the Oval Office. It is no mistake that we are throwing out crazy things on Truth Social, like Argentinian airspace should be considered closed. It's no wonder that we are back and forth within the administration about Pete Hegseth's alleged war crimes. It is all absolutely important, but it is distracting from stories that are hidden deep within the local and independent press. I encourage you to go give this a read.
War crime, murder, or completely legal? That's what we're ultimately going to find out when it comes to those strikes conducted by the U.S. military on boats in international waters, allegedly carrying drugs. And in particular, the secondary strike on a boat in early September that killed 2 survivors of the initial strike. The White House confirmed, yes, that happened on September 2nd. Now, generally, the U.S. military does not conduct what are known as double-tap strikes because they're illegal through the U.S. military code, U.S. law, and also international law. That's not to say that it's illegal to hit the same target twice. That is legal, but what's illegal is targeting the wounded or defenseless. Doing that could be considered a war crime. Now, there's a lot in there, and there's definitely a lot that we still do not know. And what we don't know is just as important as what we do know at this point. So I'm going to get to what we know, what we don't know in a second. But first, I want you to hear directly from the President of the United States and the Secretary of War, formerly Secretary of Defense, when asked today about who gave the order to hit that boat a second time.
I did, I still haven't gotten a lot of information because I rely on Pete. But to me, it was an attack. It wasn't 1 strike, 2 strikes, 3 strikes. Somebody asked me a question about the second strike. I didn't know about the second strike. I didn't know anything about people. I wasn't involved in it. I knew they took out a boat. I can say this, I want those boats taken out.
Okay, so the commander-in-chief of the United States says he didn't know anything about that second strike on the same boat. All he knows is he gave the order to take out the boats. He's then pointing the finger at Pete, as in Pete Hegseth, who is the next logical person in the chain of command who could have given that order to hit the boat again. So did he?
The first couple of strikes, as you would, as any leader would want, you want to own that responsibility. So I said, I'm going to be the one to make the call after getting all the information and make sure it's the right strike. That was September 2nd. I watched that first strike live. As you can imagine, at the Department of War, we got a lot of things to do. So I didn't stick around for the hour and 2 hours, whatever, where all the sensitive site exploitation digitally occurs. So I moved on to my next meeting. A couple of hours later, I learned that that commander had made which he had the complete authority to do. And by the way, Admiral Bradley made the correct decision to ultimately sink the boat and eliminate the threat. He sunk the boat, and eliminated the threat. And it was the right call. We have his back.
Okay, so he's saying a lot in there. He's saying he made the call to strike the boat. He watched the first strike happen live, and then he says he walked away from the live feed because he says he's a busy person. And then when he returned, he learned there were 2 survivors of the initial strike, and the admiral in charge of the operation was the one who made the call to strike the boat again, killing those 2 survivors. So what he's saying is it was the admiral who ordered that second strike, and he, as the secretary in charge, wasn't physically there?
So you didn't see any survivors, to be clear, after that first strike? You personally?
I did not personally see survivors, but I stand, because the thing was on fire. Right. It was exploded and fire and smoke. You can't see anything. You got digital. This is called the fog of war. Right. This is what you in the press don't understand. You sit in your air-conditioned offices or up on Capitol Hill and you nitpick and you plant fake stories in the Washington Post about kill everybody, phrases on anonymous sources not based in anything, not based in any truth at all. And then you want to throw out really irresponsible terms about American heroes, about the judgment that they made. I wrote a whole book on this topic because of what politicians and the press does to warfighters. President Trump has empowered commanders to do what is necessary, which is dark and difficult things in the dead of night on behalf of the American people. We support them.
Clearly, Hegseth is defending these strikes, and he's saying he has the back of the military commanders that he puts in charge of these missions. But at the same time, he is absolutely distancing himself from the order to hit the boat again. And then I guess he's blaming the media for reporting on it and blaming politicians who are questioning it. Now, there are a lot of questions that still need answers before we can get a full picture of whether this is legal or not legal. First, there are questions about whether these boat strikes are legal at all. The president says he has designated these drug smugglers as terrorists because he says the drugs they're carrying are killing hundreds of thousands of Americans. So he has every right to kill them, and he says he's going to continue to do so both on water and on land if he has to. Now, many Democrats and some Republicans are questioning whether the president can even conduct these strikes. Congress has not authorized them, and they have certainly not approved a declaration of war. On top of that, the Trump administration has not provided one piece of evidence publicly that proves these people in these boats are actually carrying drugs headed for the United States. Some absolutely could be, but others definitely were not. And we know that because after a different strike, there were also survivors who were not captured or arrested by the U.S. military, but were sent back to their home countries. If they were actually smuggling drugs headed to the United States, wouldn't the U.S. military capture them and keep them in custody until they could be tried? The other question is, even if they were suspected of carrying drugs, can they legally be killed for that? Does the president or even the Secretary of War get to be the judge, jury, and executioner? Those are real questions lawmakers are asking right now. The second set of questions has to do with this actual second strike or double tap strike. Who was actually responsible for giving that order? How long was it between the initial strike and then that second strike? Was it a double tap or was it an immediate follow-up strike to eliminate a threat? And if it was that, how did whoever was responsible determine that the survivors clinging to the boat after the initial strike were a threat? Republicans and Democrats in both the House and the Senate are now investigating this incident because someone somewhere is going to have to take responsibility. The Admiral and even Hegseth are going to ultimately have to testify about this mission. And once Congress gets to the bottom of it, then we will know if it was legal or not. And remember, if this incident was found to be illegal, the Supreme Court says the President of the United States has immunity protection for any alleged criminal action that he may take while in office. However, that criminal immunity does not get passed down the chain of command.
All you blue anon, Elon Musk zapped the votes with Starlink conspiracy theorists who are all up in my comments screaming at me for weeks, for months. Why won't you support the Rockland lawsuit? Why won't you have smart elections on your YouTube and interview them? Why is it that you aren't supporting the work of Election Truth Alliance? And I was like, no, y'all, I'm not supporting that grift. That's a grift. I'm not interested in being distracted by conspiracy theories. I want to focus on the real ways that Republicans work to suppress the vote through gerrymandering, kicking people off the voter rolls, active voter suppression. Classic racist techniques that they have used for decades and continue to use are using extremely aggressively right now because Republicans know if they can't cheat, they can't win. If the American people are not only allowed but empowered to exercise our right to vote, to carry out our civic duty to vote, Republicans can't win. Massive voter turnout, Republicans lose. So they have to suppress the vote through tried and true techniques. And as we watch this fringe, radical, far-right six on the Supreme Court dismantle the Voting Rights Act, it's easier and easier and easier for Republicans to do just that. So no, I was never going to get behind these lawsuits. The day the Rockland lawsuit was filed, I did a long video explaining why the lawsuit had no merit. I read through all of it. I listened to elections experts who explained the discrepancies, and I was not going to get behind that. I was not going to give any credence or energy to that. I was not going to use my platform to elevate that grift. Too many people who follow my content have donated gobs of money to those two organizations. I believe Smart Elections has set themselves up as a 501c3. Their shit is just full of like, please donate to our cause. Please donate. It's tax deductible. So many people are distracted with this hope that like the elections were going to get overturned. And I was like, y'all, this Rockland lawsuit has no merit. And people were screaming at me for months that I was blind. They were so disappointed in me. Why was I so resistant? I got accused of being a closet Republican, a closet psyop, because I was afraid to share the truth of what was happening. And I was like, no, y'all, there's no merit to this. And person after person after person in my comments was like, well, how come the lawsuit is allowed to proceed? If there's a lawsuit, then there must be something there. Where there's smoke, there's fire. And I was like, you don't understand, like anybody can file a lawsuit. And so instead of continuing to argue with people in my comments, I was like, okay, let's just pump the brakes and see where this lawsuit goes. I will eat my hat if it comes back that votes were zapped by Starlink or some other process to switch these 525 votes for Donald Trump in these conservative Jewish districts that vote as a bloc, and in 2020 all voted for Donald Trump. Y'all were like, no, it's a statistical anomaly. It's not possible. These votes had to be switched. It's not possible that they went 100% for Donald Trump, even though they went 100% for Donald Trump in 2020. I had people telling me I was an idiot. I was going to lose my whole platform because I wouldn't promote this shit. And so, yes, I will smugly sit here today and say, what? The Rockland lawsuit was dismissed? What? Oh my God, I'm so shocked. You don't take my word for it. Here's the Smart Elections, folks.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lulu Freistad. I'm the co-founder and executive director of Smart Elections. And I am extremely sorry to announce that the lawsuit challenging the 2024 elections in Rockland County, New York, has been dismissed by the judge.
What? What was that? I'm not saying y'all owe me an apology, but also all of those accounts who tried to drag me on TikTok, all of those accounts who made an awful lot of money grifting off of this lawsuit, who built their entire platform off of distracting people on the political left with conspiracy theories about the election. All of these blue anon grifters. Where are they now? Where are they now? Doubling down, shifting their grift, trying a new angle. How much confirmation bias is there going to be here for y'all? How much sunk cost fallacy is there going to be for y'all here? Elon Musk and Donald Trump did not switch votes for Kamala Harris. We have secure elections. It's important that we make sure we defend those. It's vitally important that we exercise our right to vote. Promoting conspiracy theories like this, do you know what that does? It undermines people's belief in free and fair elections. It makes people say, why should I bother to show up? The results are rigged anyway. When you have people saying that the election was stolen, what you are doing is actively aiding the fascists and suppressing the vote. I've said that for months and months and months, and people came for me in droves. And if you want to apologize, okay, I'm here. I'm ready to listen. Please, I beg you, stop discouraging people from voting. Stop telling people that the results are predetermined and rigged. They're not. We need to encourage everybody to vote. We are super voters. We vote in every single election, no matter how small. We all show up to vote. We work for campaigns. We work for get out the vote movements. Electoralism all on its own is not going to save us. It is a key component in resisting fascism. You don't discourage people from voting. You don't lean into conspiracy theories. I really have concerns about whether some of these TikTok accounts who built all of their platform perpetuating these conspiracy theories, whether these nonprofits have ulterior motives, because at the end of the day, what they do is they aid the regime in power. They aid the fascists by discouraging Democrats from voting, by discouraging people who lean left from voting at all. It's also a fantastic distraction to keep y'all preoccupied so that you don't look at and fight against the very real ways that Republicans do try to cheat. They do try to steal the election through gerrymandering and voter suppression. They want to deny us representation in government. They want to install a fascist regime. The way that they're going to likely try and do that is when the election results come back in the midterms and the Republicans lose they lose in a humiliating blue wave all over the country. Donald Trump and the Republicans are going to come in and say, no, our elections are not secure. They're easily rigged. The votes were switched to give Democrats a false victory. And all y'all blue and on blue folks, you have laid that foundation. You have laid that foundation with your conspiracy theories, your lies, your false premises that the election results were switched in the 2024 election. You have perpetuated a lie that our elections are not secure and that folks can just come in and switch the votes. And therefore, Donald Trump doesn't have to honor the results of the midterms. Therefore, he can just declare who the winners are because we no longer have safe, free, and fair, reliable elections. Y'all laid the groundwork for that by spouting this conspiracy theory shit. And my question for you is, are you going to let it go now? Are you done? Are you done with this? Are you ready to actually start fighting for democracy, putting your money and your energy and your time and your focus into the things we have to do to combat fascism?
I watched Trump's cabinet meeting today, so you don't have to, and here's my overview. It was 2 hours and 15 minutes, and I'm going to try and fit it all into 10. Trump mentioned Biden 10 times, and I'm going to give you a Biden count for each speaker as we go over their notes. So Trump said that affordability doesn't mean anything to anyone, literally his words, and says the word affordability is a con job by the Democrats. It's a hoax. And then he talks about how he watched a low IQ congressperson talking about affordability. I don't want to keep repeating the same points, but in a row, he said drug prices are down 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, and 800%, and no one's ever heard of it before. And then he starts talking about the fat drug. He says 60% of our car industry was stolen, whatever that means, in a world where we have free markets, but whatever. And then says that in the not too distant future, because we're taking in so much money, 18 trillion, he says, you will no longer be paying income tax in the not too distant future. He at one point just says China doesn't have gasoline, and then he says that he got all A's on his physical exam, and then he did the very difficult mental test, which no other president has done, and then he randomly says that 2020 was rigged, and then he says that NATO called him the president of Europe, and then talking about the murders of the National Guard people in DC, he said there are no murders in DC and it's super safe. Then the drunk talks, and the only thing he says is we're taking out narco-terrorists. He mentions Biden twice. Lutnick also says nothing of import, but mentions Biden once. Duffy doesn't mention Biden, but he says we've already completed 1/3 of a project where we're switching all copper over to fiber, and then says that they're removing all of the licenses for people who were given licenses illegally by Democrat governors. They're talking about like commercial driving licenses. And then he says we should all just be better people on an airplane. Then Trump gets back up and he says boot edge, and then repeats boot edge when he's talking about Buttigieg. And then he blames the helicopter that ran into the plane on Buttigieg. And then he says, I don't want to be braggadocious, but we're saving our country. Then Eric Turner talks. He doesn't mention Biden, but he says that we're going to save the American taxpayers $500 million by moving the HUD building out of DC into Alexandria, Virginia. I grew up in Alexandria. It ain't cheap. That's why I don't live there anymore. Then Brooke Rollins talks. She mentions Biden twice, and she says that 500,000 people were receiving food stamps twice, like a double receiving of the food stamps. But then she says that all of that fraud is happening in red states, and blue states just haven't given them their information yet. So she's going to stop sending all funding to blue states until they give their information. Next up is Besant. He doesn't mention Biden, but he says there is going to be no tax on tips and overtime and Social Security, and it's all going to be retroactive. So next year, everything's going to be great next year. I know you're still suffering now, but next year, everything's going to be great. Next up is JD Vance, who only spoke for like a minute and a half, and he mentioned Biden 4 times. And he says that every problem in the US can be traced back to Biden, and mentions things like the food cost and housing cost. No explanation of how it's Biden's fault, just it is all Biden's fault. Next up is Bondi. She mentions Biden once, and she says that there are no murders happening in DC, but also that monster who killed those National Guardsmen in DC, we're going to make sure that they pay for everything. And then she says that the weight of all the drugs that the DEA has seized since Trump has been in office is equal to 17 full semi-trucks. I mean, it's anything but the metric system for these people. She also then brags about how the Trump administration has been sued 575 times, as if that's a good thing, and says that it's more than every administration since Reagan combined. She thinks this is a good thing. Next up is Lori DeReamer. She mentions Biden 3 times, and she says that they're now allowing seniors to invest in crypto in their 401k. I don't see any problems with that, especially with Trump making billions and billions in personal money for his own crypto. And then she says, just hilariously, that they've saved businesses $1 billion by ending DEI. Next up is Chris Wright. He mentions Biden once, and he says that California only has really high gas prices because they have really bad politicians. They also have the 4th largest economy in the world, but I guess we're just going to forget about that and just say that they have bad politicians, and that's why they have high gas prices. Next up is Kristi Noem. She mentions Biden once, and she says that Biden used the DHS to bring terrorists into the U.S., and then she thanks Trump for keeping hurricanes away from the U.S., and then says we've saved hundreds of millions of lives by blowing up cocaine in the Caribbean. Let's do some math here. She says hundreds of millions, which at the lowest is 200 million. And Trump says again in the speech that each boat that they blow up saves 25,000 American lives. So if you just do a little quick math, 200 million divided by 25,000, they've blown up 8,000 boats in the Caribbean. Noem then says that Walz is either a complete idiot or he brought people into our country on purpose, and then talks about people being brother fuckers just like Trump did a couple days ago. Next up is Kelly Loeffler. She mentions Biden once, and she says that she wants to thank Trump for bringing faith back into our country, and then talks about how there's a Bible study tomorrow. Next up is Tulsi Gabbard. She doesn't mention Biden by name, but she does say the previous administration. She also says that the deep state is abusing its power to go after Trump and his family. Twice. This deep state seems to be doing a whole lot of damage when the Republicans are completely in power in every branch of government. Next up is Lee Zeldin. He mentions Biden 4 times and Obama twice. He says that he's visited all 50 states in the past 300 days, so he's probably not working that much. And I put this in my notes. His eyes are dead in the same way that Mark Zuckerberg's eyes are dead. And then he says that every single day the EPA has a big environmental accomplishment every single day. So there's 300 plus massive environmental accomplishments that have happened by the EPA since Trump took office. Next up is Linda McMahon. She doesn't mention Biden, but she does say that we can't seem to figure out how to do education like every other developed nation in the world has. But the reason for that is they're just so itty bitty and we're just so big. We just can't figure it out because we're just so big. And then she says that we got DEI and anti-Semitism out of all of our universities. Next up is RFK. I honestly have legitimate issues understanding what he's saying, but if I understood him correctly, he said these. They're opening up hormone replacement therapy because the medical cartels, he's talking about our medical system and he's calling it the medical cartels. The medical cartels have limited the use of that for people in menopause. Apparently, they just don't get it, but now they can again. He says Americans are already receiving all of the benefits of the lower drug prices, like the fat drug. And then he says similarly, I think he meant similarly, Americans couldn't receive their own medical records before, but now they're fixing that and now Americans can receive their medical records. I can get mine right now. Next up is Marco Rubio. Now, you know what Marco Rubio was saying was not that interesting, at least to Trump, because Trump literally kept falling asleep the entire time Marco Rubio was talking. But he does say one interesting thing to me. He says that more people die each week in Ukraine than in the entirety of the time that we spent fighting against terrorism in the Middle East. He's referring to American soldiers who died, but he's basically just saying brown lives don't matter. Ukrainian and Russian lives, they matter, but brown lives in the Middle East don't matter. That's the only way, because we killed over 1 million people in the Middle East in the 20 plus years that we were there. All right, now we're back to Trump for questions. He says that, again, affordability is a hoax that was started by the Democrats. Not that like saying affordability or saying that it is affordable now, just affordability in general is a hoax that was created by the Democrats. And then he talks about winning counties again because he thinks that land can vote. And then he says, look at gasoline. It's the biggest and the simplest. So just look at that. Trump then says other countries are sending fentanyl into our country in order to kill our citizens. So he does not understand how drug dealers make money. He doesn't understand how business or economics works in general. You don't make money from selling drugs to dead people because dead people can't buy drugs. Pete Hegseth then answers a question about the strike, and he says, oh, I was just so busy I couldn't stick around and see whether or not there was a second strike, but if there was, it was totally legal, and this is just called the fog of war. You just don't understand it when you're sitting in your comfy desks trying to report on this and saying that I said kill everyone, which he probably did. Trump is either forgetting or getting closer to the right number, because he now says that 200,000 people a year die from drug overdoses, when just last week and the week before that and before that, he was saying that it was 300,000 people per year. The actual number is much closer to 100,000 per year, and a lot of that has been caused by the opioid epidemic that was caused by these pharmaceutical companies, but no mention of them at all, of course. We're just going to keep blowing up boats in the Caribbean and hope that works. And not just the Caribbean now, because he says that we're going to start doing the same type of bombings on land. And then he asks a reporter who's asking a question, but not with an American accent. He says, speak louder and use less words. Trump then says that almost 100 countries nominated him for the Nobel Peace Prize, and that the woman who actually received it, she said that that was an incredibly bad choice and that Trump should have received it, which is not what she said. And then he says that this is the most transparent administration because they spend so much time answering your questions. They talked for like 2 hours and then took questions for like 15 minutes, and that 2 hours of talking was mostly just praising Trump. With just a beautiful piece of insight, Trump says, I hear the country of Colombia is making cocaine. Brilliant. Trump said during the VP debate he couldn't figure out which one was more incompetent, JD or Tim Walz. I swear to God. Trump says that Somalia is barely a country. They just run around killing each other and there is no structure. He then says that Ilhan Omar hates everyone and she hates Jewish people. And she says that she's incompetent and a horrible person. And then he says that Ilhan Omar is garbage, she's garbage, her friends are garbage, and Somalis do nothing but bitch. And finally, for some good news, Trump says he will not be running in 2028. High Temper Centers, love you.